They don't eat. They don't sleep. They don't blink. I blink.
When the robots deviated from their assigned task, we banished them to the electric state. 200,000 square miles of secure territory.
You famously never owned robots, did you?
I never trusted them.
Right. The Russo brothers have made another movie that is not a Marvel film, and especially on Netflix. This one, The Electric State, starring Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things and Chris Pratt from, well, a lot of things, mainly Marvel, but a whole bunch of other things. But so this one is based on I believe it was a graphic novel, and the graphic novel I've heard is great. And the graphic novel, what that one is it's more of a, dystopian, like very like, like very gloomy look. And it's supposed to be kind of like more like almost like, like dystopian, but also very much like, like horror kind of esque. But this movie, they basically said, hey, all this good stuff, we're not going to do that. We're not going to be faithful to the source material. And we're just going to throw in a lot of this stuff because we think that all these robots that look like cartoons or look silly will appeal to a younger audience. And we don't care about any of that. We don't care about any of the source material. So in this movie, we got Millie Bobby Brown. This takes place in the 90s, in the early 90s, which I'm just going to say this right now. When I saw the trailer, I thought, okay, this is in modern times. It's in, currently 2025. Nope, it takes place in the early 90s. And I'm like, you could have easily said, oh, this isn't in the 90s and put it in today, and it would have made no difference whatsoever. But anyway, Millie Bobby Brown plays a girl who she just lost. She loses her brother. Then a couple years go by, and she gets encountered by a little robot that looks suspiciously like a cartoon character that her brother loved. And then the robot's like, no, actually, your brother's alive. And so it becomes a, one of those point A to point B kind of films. And she enlists the help of Chris Pratt, who plays a guy who you can tell he kind of has a past, even though they don't really go in deep on it. But he and his sidekick, who's a robot, who's voiced by Anthony Mackie, they're basically almost like smugglers, like rogues. And they'll say like, okay, we'll help you out. And then it just goes from there. But I want to get the positive stuff out of the way first. This movie cost $320 million to make. A huge portion of that went into the CGI, which looks really good. It really does. The CGI, the robots, they all look really cool. I can tell they despite changing the story drastically, and they wanted to appeal more to a younger audience, the robots, most of the time, they actually did put a little bit of creativity into them. Like each one almost had like their own personality. It felt very much almost like If, where the imaginary friends, each one was very, very different in style, not style, but like the way they looked, the way they interacted, the way they were. And it was cool that way. So it was like, okay, you guys put a lot of time and effort into thinking of this. Unfortunately, that's where the problem lies with that. But I'll quickly say this last thing. Alan Silvestri did the score. And if you know me, I think Alan Silvestri's music is incredible. I love his Back to the Future stuff. I love what he did with Avengers. And, I love Silvestri. He's a great composer. Now, going back to the robots, the ones that they put the most creativity in, they're sitting in the background or they get killed off. And it was like, but you spent all that time creating them when in actuality they're like lamb to the slaughter. And instead, the leader of these robots is a Mr. Peanut from Planters, who's voiced by Woody Harrelson. And I'm like, what? Like, what the hell is this? Like, I was really kind of questioning, like, is this in like an adult, like, science fiction dystopian action film, or is this a children's film? And it also doesn't help that this movie is like an amalgamation of so many different movies, from the obvious ones being like Ready Player One and even like Transformers. In fact, I saw a review saying that this is like the comic relief characters in robots in Michael Bay's Transformers movies, if they got together and did their own version of Ready Player One. And I'm like, wow, you actually nailed it. I saw Transformers, I saw Ready Player One. I even saw like eminence of stuff from like District 9 to like Escape from New York. And it's like, you guys are trying to be a whole bunch of these movies and trying to mash them together and throw in some like kiddie stuff in here, and it's not working. The comedy does not work. It almost feels like you're watching a really poorly made Abbott and Costello, and I didn't like that. They try to have some emotional moments in the film, but unfortunately I didn't really care for anybody, because it was kind of like they didn't seem believable to me, so the emotion level did not hit for me. There is a crap ton of product placement in the movie, even to the point where I'll say this real quick. It's not really a spoiler, but they get to a mall and they're scoping it out, and you see like the Sears logo, you see JCPenney, you see like I believe you saw like a McDonald's thing, which they skim past it really quickly, which is fine, but Chris Pratt goes, man, I hope they have like lots of food, and Bobby Brown is just like, what are you talking about? Like, they're all robots. You think like even if they had human food, it would be bad. And he goes like, well, we went to a Panda Express and that stuff never goes bad. And then he literally just starts like listing off the things you can get from Panda Express. Like, yeah, the fried rice, orange chicken, Kung Pao chicken, dumplings. And it's like, what? What? It's like, really? You didn't need to do that long. And it really doesn't work. So I feel like a lot of the time, the $320 million budget was to make the robots look as, I would say as believable as they could, but to look cool. And they did succeed on that, on them looking cool, because the CGI is really good. And all the product placements, because there is a ton of it, and to the point where they throw in some like rock songs in here, like they have Judas Priest Breaking the Law, but they have like a cover. They have a really like crappy cover of Fought the Law by The Clash, and it's just like, ow, you're just like trying to push diarrhea in my ears. Like, get out of here. And to the point where they even do a piano version of Journey's Don't Stop Believing. And it's like, really? Like, all this money and you couldn't, like, get those songs? Like, really? Like, Judas Priest, that was the one you can only afford. Everything else was very, like, instrumental or royalty-free. It's even the point where they play a song that's in the public domain. I can't remember what song it is. But it was the like dun 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 dun. Oh, I forget what it was. Where they start playing like a piano version of that, and then it bleeds into the actual version. I'm like, that one. I'm like, no, I don't think this works here. But I will say this to recap overall. This movie, while feels like a combination of a bunch of other films that I think have done something like this, but better, there are a lot of things that did work, like the CGI, Sylvester's score, and some of the creativity that went into the robots. Unfortunately, with the robots, they're all barely there. Even like a huge cast, like Chris Pratt, Millie Bobby Brown, to like voice talents, or like like Stanley Tucci, to Giancarlo Esposito, to even Kehu Quan, to even like voice talents that are in here, like Woody Harrelson, Anthony Mackie, a couple of other people there that I'm blanking on, but it's a big cast. It was very much something like If, but with robots and more action. But If I didn't really care for either, If was a lot better than this, because If was like, okay, I understand like what you're doing, and even like some emotional parts in that movie where I'm like, wow, that actually worked. This doesn't. So I was honestly, after watching it, I was about to give it a fine, and then I started thinking about it more, going like, looking back and going, yeah, that sucked. Yeah, that sucked. Yeah, that sucked. And it was just slowly going like, oh no, I'm not gonna give this one a pass, am I? So unfortunately, the best I can probably give it is a low fine, like the lowest of fines, like that is teetering on a terrible. Mainly because the CGI, all the good stuff I mentioned, and plus, if you have kids, I think they would enjoy it because it's giant, cool-looking robots on the screen. They'll love it. It feels like one of those movies that you can, if your kid or kids are being an issue, you pop this on and then they immediately sit down and just glue to the screen. But unfortunately, there is a bunch of like adult stuff, like they do swear a lot. And it's like, okay, but it feels like a kiddie movie that kids can't watch. And it's like, okay, you really couldn't find that balance act. So that's probably the best I can give it. As much as, the good things I point out, there's just a lot of stuff that was miscalculated and bad that I probably won't rewatch this again, and may be on the worst of the year.
You want to go get your brother back? I'll go with you.